I truly believe what I try to do is help a rancher make money. I mean, you saw kind of the video that was done. There's 1,000 people in this industry, there's 1 million people in this industry that can help you get better cattle. Raise good cattle. We all do as best as we can with the resources we got. The problem is we don't all have the same resources. None of us get to pick our parents, right? I mean, I'm still trying to get Gates to say he'll adopt me. But I think that last filing against me on a stalker deal may keep me from calling him anymore, so otherwise he's not going to adopt me. So we all, have to deal with the resources that we've got, and we still try to do the best we can. Now, again, there's a lot of people that's going to tell you how to make better cattle. There's even more people out there, including Cattle Facts. I'm a member of Cattle Facts as well. So that gives me a right to gripe about them sometimes. Okay, now, I know Troy probably already took off, but I'd say this if he was still here. There's 1,000 people out there to tell you what prices are going to do. But how do you control price as a cow-calf operation? The best you can do is make sure you're above average, right? You cannot control average, okay? If the average price between 14 and 16 is going down, there ain't a darn thing you can do about it. What you hope to do is make sure that you've got calves that are going to put you above the average, right? Now, how many of you in here have heard my definition? Some of you probably heard me speak before. How many of you know my definition of average? Anybody? Okay, I'm going to define, everybody know what average is, right? I'm going to tell you the definition of average so you will never forget it. Pardon my language already, okay? But here's the definition of average. If you put my head in a freezer and you light my ass on fire, on average, I'm comfortable. Now, do you want to be smoking or do you want to be freezing? Okay? That's average for you. Okay? So if price is going to do what it's going to do, the question is whether you're above average or below average. That's the little programs that we talk about. That's the VAC 45, backgrounding, all those type of things that we do to have the best calves based on the resources we have. Okay? So what I've tried to do is then come in here and say, okay, well, let's look at the numbers then financially. Okay? And financially plus integrated. When I say integrated, that's a production and a financial number calculated together. Okay? So what I've tried to do, particularly the last year of my extension career, was come up with a set of KPIs. Okay, what is a KPI? A KPI is a key performance indicator. Anybody ever heard of a KPI outside of ag? It's a funny thing because we're thinking this is kind of cool stuff, this is brand new stuff, and I had a gentleman from the oil industry come up to me after I made this presentation and say, we've been doing KPIs forever in the oil industry. We've been doing them in the retail. We've been doing them all over the place. It just seems that we never did anything in ag with them. So what is a KPI? A key performance indicator. That is something going on in your operation that you vie as very critical. In order, if I succeed on a KPI, this particular one, in time, I reach my overall goals of the ownership. Okay? Now, what I did was come up with about 13. I don't have time to show you all 13 of them. Andy, you going to tell me when I got like 30 minutes to go?
Yes, sir.
Because I'm going to go late, I can already tell you. Okay? You just need to tell me when I shut up.
We're good.
All right. So I've come up with about 13. I'm not going to show you all, but I'm going to show you the ones that I believe every ranch person, and I say person because that will include the foreman, the camper, the manager, the general manager, the wagon boss, and then ultimately who owns the place. All ranch people should be calculated every year. Okay, now think about that. If there's one thing that I can identify that is very critical to my operation and I track it over time, am I fulfilling the goals of my operation, of the ownership? Okay, that's what we're trying to do. So without further ado, I'm going to jump through a bunch of this stuff. So KPIs, and forgive me if I have to go too fast, but there's a lot of stuff here. Key performance indicators, performance activities happening as a result of your management. Whoever you are, if you're involved in that management of that ranch, this one is key to you, and there may be 10 or 12 of them. Is management fulfilling the goals of ownership? And we've got things going on in this industry we have for the last 20 years, but there's some, I mean, you start talking about knowing where your ranch is. Guys, it's critical now, okay? And I'm going to show you why here in just a little bit. Am I fulfilling the goals of the ownership? Track them over time, get a good trend going, see what's going on. Production KPIs follow what we call the beef cow-calf SPAW. Anyone familiar with SPAW? I mean, it's an old program. It was endorsed by the National Cattlemen's Beef Association clear back in 1991. And what they tried to do was try to come up with a standard way to analyze a cow-calf operation. Now, there was great things about SPAW. It was the first time something was tried done in the cattle industry like that, but SPAW fell short because it just looked at cows. How many of you just have cows on your ranch as a resource, as a revenue source? Well, we've probably got other things going on. Some of us may be running yearling cattle. Some of us may be running stockers on small grain. Some of us may be doing wildlife. Some of us may be selling gravel, doing anything we can to make a buck, right? SPAW stopped at cows. What I wanted to do is expand this, and let's look at your entire operation and see what's going on. Okay? Are you really, in fact, making money here? So the production followed SPAW. The financial KPIs follow what we call the Farm Financial Standards Council. And again, that's not necessarily either one of those very important. The important part is right there at the bottom when it says it's important to calculate them correctly. Because, this is my standard line here, it's pretty easy to have a 95% calf crop. Let me say that again. It's pretty easy to have a 95% calf crop after you've preg checked. That's supposed to be funny, but sometimes it's kind of an insult to some of us, isn't it? Well, now he's getting personal. No, I want you to calculate it based on total females that you thought you were going to get bred. Okay? So again, what we tried to do was standardize it and always calculate them correctly. Now, again, I'm only going to show you one on the production, so I'm kind of scooting on here. Need to balance the use of KPIs. If we did a full analysis on your ranch and it showed that your labor cost or your feed cost was too high, okay, compared to everybody else, and we showed a KPI that your labor cost was above normal, but all of a sudden your pregnancy rates are down or your calving rates are down or whatever, I could attack one of those, try to get my pregnancy rates up or my calving rates up, but if I'm doing that at the expense of increasing my labor cost, I just defeated the purpose, didn't I? Well, let me put it in y'all's terms. Donald's not in here yet, and he could write volumes about this, okay? So if I wanted to increase my weaning weights, what do I look at from a bull standpoint? It's not a KPI. What is it from bulls that we look at? EPDs, right? So I can go out there and say, okay, well, I'm going to increase my yearling weight, or I'm going to go find a bull that's got high EPDs on my yearlings. What do I have to be careful of? Mothering ability, right? Because all of a sudden, these things can become antagonistic, right? So I have to balance these things. KPIs are no different. I have to balance these things. This one may be high, but it's because it's that high, it's causing this one to really be working well, okay? So there's got to be balance there. To focus on one at the expense of another, all of a sudden, you're not improving the overall performance of the ranch. So some of these specific, now think about this, from a ranch standpoint that's got multiple enterprises, multiple revenue generators. Some of them, we're going to look at a 30,000-foot view of the ranch. That is going to be overall inclusive of everything that's going on the ranch. Okay? But then we're going to drill down and look at the pieces of the ranch. Okay, let's look at the cows. Let's look at the yearlings. Let's look at how many, now up here in this area, anybody growing hay? Oh my God, get a life. No, I'm just kidding. Some of you may want to be growing hay, and if I'm feeding hay to my cows, a particular KPI should be what? What it's costing you to produce a ton of hay. That number should be calculated every year based on your total cost, okay? And I can assure you it's probably higher than what you think it is, okay? I was just on a ranch in Oklahoma. and their cost was $106 a ton, which was very cheap compared to some of them I've seen when they were talking about $251 a ton. You don't think about what that machinery cost you. You don't think about what that depreciation on that new machinery cost you. You don't think about the total cost until somebody does some math for you and puts it in the form of, quote, a KPI. You don't know what it is, okay? So those are the important things. Some of them are looking at specific activities, and then I'll tell you that this little line right here, targets have been identified through analysis of individual ranches. Now, with all that to do, let's talk, okay? Let's look at no, we're not going to look at 13. We're going to look at about 8 KPIs that I think are very critical to every operation, okay? And only one of them is a production number, okay? And the first one, pounds weaned per exposed female. I know that there are lots of ways to increase productivity on a range, okay? But this one specifically is to the cows, and we're talking, what is a KPI target here? 460 pounds. Now, what's that number? Well, that number, if I only had one number to look at on a ranch from a production standpoint, it would be that number. That number is the point of the spear, okay? When I say point of the spear, I mean that is weaning percentage, weaning weights, okay? And in fact, if I wanted to calculate this number, and you were truthful with yourself, and you'd calculated your weaning percentage accurately, what you would do is take your weaning percentage, let's say 85%, times your average weaning weights across all calves, including your doggies. Okay, we all got those little things that we're going to have to sell off at some time because they don't fit the mold, okay? But using all average weaning weights, 500 pounds times 0.85 should give you about 460 pounds, okay? That's point of the spear. How many things affect getting to that point? Oh my God, it's everything, right? It's everything. I mean, it's everything we do. Well, it is, and its question becomes, who's responsible for this number? Well, everybody's responsible for it, but if I was in a ranch ownership mode, who would I hold accountable to this number? If I have 3 people, who is the point of the spear responsible for this one? The owner, the manager, or the foreman? I'm going to tell you it's the foreman, okay? Now, we're all responsible, okay? But that foreman's going to be out there horseback making sure that heifer that's having problems calving that calf is out there on his knees, her knees, pulling that calf, make sure things happen. Because why is that calf important? Well, it's one more calf, Stan. That's a stupid question. No, from my standpoint, it's $600 more of revenue. That's the way you need to think of that. Okay? 600 more of revenue. That's why I'm going to show you some numbers here in just a minute. I was on a ranch in Kansas not long ago where the ranch managed a 450 cow operation, and I tell too many stories, that's why I get behind. But I was in southeast Kansas with about 450 cow operation, meeting with the owner and the ranch manager. The ranch manager was asking the owner for more money. Didn't think he was making enough from him and his wife's standpoint. Any of you guys have to deal with that? And as I told him, well, let's look at your productivity, Mr. Ranch Manager. And if you're telling me that you're going to have a 73% calf crop, you ain't doing your job or something. And when I say you ain't doing your job, you're not doing the point of the spear, everything on that shaft to get that 73%. And when you relate that to revenue and a number that I'm going to show you here in just a minute, if I look at total revenue and multiply that times 15%, that's what my labor cost needs to be. I can't afford to pay you more because my revenue isn't there because of a 73% calf crop. You want more money in a labor salary situation? Generate more revenue. That's good business, guys. And so if I need to increase revenue, I need to find out where it's happening. 73% calf crop is bad revenue, okay? All right. So lots of things going on. Now, to make this interesting, And again, I know I'm going to run out of time here, so I told you how to calculate this. There's an average. I think my little laser went away, but anyway. The green line is the target, 460 pounds. I threw up 2 ranches here that I've worked with for a lot of years. Neither one of them's in Texas, okay? Protect the innocent. The red ranch obviously had some problems, but they've got on top of it. The blue ranch, been banging right along. Both of them got to the target, okay? Now that is, in fact, trending, okay? Now, we've already said kind of who's responsible for this number. Again, everybody in the ranch is responsible for this, but on their knees, who's most responsible? And I'm going to say it's probably the foreman. Now, $1 million question here. If I've got a 460-pound target on this one, should I adjust that target every year? Should that number go up or down? 460 pounds, should I adjust that target up or down? If I'm out here as a ranch owner and I'm hiring you guys to run this ranch, and somebody named Stan told him that you need to set 460 pounds as a target, should that be changed each year? My answer is no. That's going to be pretty much the kicker. This is one of the issues for the cow-calf industry within a beef industry. That probably is not going to go higher. Now, I'm not saying on any particular ranch that shouldn't go higher, but think about this. From a cow standpoint, what are the 3 things a cow gives you? Okay, as a ranch out here running any type of cows, what's one cow give you? 3 things. Well, let's start at the end. She gives up her life, right? As a cull. Okay, that's one thing. Number 2, what's she give you? Hopefully she gives you a calf, right? And that calf is probably about an 83% calf, okay? Because that's weaning percentage. Does all your cows get bred? Does all the cows finally wean a calf? And the answer is pretty much no, okay? So she gives you 83% calf crop. Now the fact that she gives you 1 calf or 0.83 calves a year, does that change? Has that changed? As I tell the beef cattle researchers, you guys aren't doing your jobs because these things should be having litters by now. She can still just have 1 calf, right? And that ain't going to change. So what's the 3rd thing then she gives you? She gives you the genetic potential, 50% of it, for that calf to gain, right? Manifested in weaning weights. But she only gives you half of it, right? Bull comes, gives you the other half. All right. Is any of that going to change? So how many of those do you control? Well, she's going to die at the end. She's going to give you 83% calf crop and then weaning weights. We know that she's going to give up her life at the end. Now, longevity comes into play there. Because if she's a 10-year-old versus a 12-year-old, things change there, don't they? Okay? The 83% probably ain't going to change a whole lot. You may be banging about 86, and that's fine. That's fantastic. Okay? If you can consistently do that, that's great. And there are ranches that can do that. What influences weaning weights? What? Genetics, nutrition. What else? What's the top 3 influencer of weaning weights? Genetics, potentials, or nutrition. Number 1, weather. Okay? Weather is the number 1 influencer of weaning weights. That's normal rainfall those years for those ranches. Okay? So we're sitting here banging, and I put that little area there somewhere between 75 and 125% normal rainfall. That's what that box is. Okay? So at times, and that should tell you, I mean, again, I'm not trying to tell you where these ranches are, But notice one ranch got a lot less normal rainfall. One felt the full blunt of the drought that you guys experienced in 2011, okay? The other ranch did not, okay? Blue Ranch had all the rainfall it needed, okay? Now let's tell you that Blue Ranch is well over 2,000 cows. The Red Ranch is about 500 cows. So both of them are pretty good commercial type operations. Now, I show you that to show you this. What's the number one influencer of weaning weights? Weather. So what we're looking at here, the bottom axis here is the percent normal rainfall. And what we see across the left-hand axis then is pounds weaned per female, including the weaning weights, okay? So where does that max out? Well, somewhere around probably 140%, okay, is where we want to be. You can see 21% of the variation in this data is explained by weather. Let me put it a different way. All those dots, all the variation in those dots, 21% of the variability of those dots are explained by percent normal rainfall. So when you get on your knees tonight and pray to the good Lord and say, bring me more rain, be more specific. Bring me 140%. That's all I need. Just don't bring it on one day. All right? All right. So that's weaning weights, and that's KPI. And I spent way too much time on that. That is one production KPI. Again, from a financial standpoint, is where the rest of them are, financial or integrated. Now, that number one, though, we still got to produce calves, right? If we're going to run a ranch, we still got to produce calves. So it's still very, very important. Now, number two, and Troy touched on it for just a minute, break even. What's it cost me then to produce that calf, okay? And what I'm showing you right now, and I have one other thing that I'm going to tell you. And for each one of these that I'm going to tell you, here's 9 ranches that I've worked with since the first year. The average size is 1,651 females. Now that's saying, well, gosh, I'm too big. That's way bigger than I am. No, there's 400 head cow operations in there. So there's a good variation in here. I'll tell you, was 16 a good production year? Seriously, was 16 a good production year or not? From what I can tell, everybody had a pretty darn good production year in 16. And in fact, that 460, I'll just tell you, the average of those 9 ranches, that 460, 511. Okay? Weaning weights were high. Pregnancy rate, weaning percentage, where the average, long-term average, about 82.5%, they were 83.5%. So even their weaning percentage was up a little bit. Okay? But if you want to write that down, 2016, their production was 511. Okay? Now we're moving on. Now, cost of production, number 2. This is the second one that any ranch should calculate. What's it costing you to produce a pound of weaned calf? And I set the target at $1.70. And I'm going to tell you, that number is probably pretty darn close. But we ain't going to like it. Okay? Now again, this isn't survey data. This isn't guesses. This is setting across ranch tables and looking at your income statements, looking at the financial statements, looking at what you're turning into the IRS. You can lie to me all you want to, but if you lie to them, then you got other issues. Okay? This is real data. Okay? Now, before we show you the numbers though, who's this most important to, or who should be most accountable on this number? If you talk about the owner, general manager, or the foreman, who should be most accountable to this number? I'm going to say the manager, okay? Because again, we got the foreman taking care of the production side, and this number is made up of 2 things. It's made up of my production level, that 460, that's controlled by the foreman, or most accountable to the foreman. But now you're also including the cost to produce that, to get that production. How many dollars did it take me to get that production, which typically is controlled by the manager. How much feed's out there, how much vet supplies out there, all those things. So the ranch manager, every ranch manager, and again, I'm talking to 3 people, may be the same person for any one of you guys, okay? If I'm doing all of this stuff myself, then you're accountable to all 3 of them. But again, most importantly, accountable to who? Now, would this number change? Again, think about the components. There's a production component, but now there's also a cost component. Production component, as I've already told you, I don't think it's changing, okay? Again, she can only give you 1 calf, and weaning weights are greatly influenced by weather, okay? That probably stays the same. But what's expenses do? That's a stupid question, isn't it? What's expenses do for you guys? It's the slow ant march of higher expenses. Yeah, there's going to be ups and down fluctuations. How many of you are now buying $60,000 pickups? My gosh. I mean, Dr. Steele mentioned to me, he saw me pulling up in my new pickup, and I made now that I've retired, and my pickup is actually a 2008 model. It's got 140,000 miles on it, so I don't have new pickups, okay? Because they're $60,000, okay? But we have to have something at some point, don't we, okay? Now, this also includes all expenses, including depreciation. We'll talk about that more in here in just a little bit, okay? So it's this total cost. Well, what's a drought do to you? Now, write this number down. And we'll just throw $1 in the pot. Of your total cost to run a cow a year, which I'm going to tell you is the average for 16 was $1,115. $1,115. How much of that is fixed cost? You ever think about that? How much of that $1,100 is fixed? Write this down, about 60%. I used to say 45 to 50, but it's actually about 60% of that is fixed cost. Now, when I say fixed cost, what I'm talking about is depreciation. Everybody knows, some of you look so old as me that you won't remember this, but if you took an Ag Econ 101 class, and the professor talked about depreciation or fixed cost, there was 5 of them, and they called them the dirty 5. And dirty was spelled D-I-R-T-I, okay? Dirty 5 were your fixed cost. What are they? D, depreciation. I, interest, your interest mortgage. R, repairs. T, taxes, property taxes. The other I, insurance, okay? Now, those are your dirty 5, okay? But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to rewrite, when I get another life here, I'm going to rewrite the textbooks, because from a cow-calf standpoint, there's actually 6 that are fixed, in my opinion, and I call them dirty 6. I didn't say sex, I said dirty 6. She raised her head on that. All right, dirty 6. It's dirty 6. What would be the 6th one? Labor. Okay? You add those things together, because how many of you like to fire people on the range? I mean, the guy ain't doing his job. I mean, you know, he's not horseback every time I need him out there. He's not doing it. But the problem is, if I fired him, what? I can't find anybody to take him, take his place. So am I better off with somebody that's underperforming or nobody? Well, it depends on how bad the wrecks are he causes, right? Okay? But we don't want to fire anybody. So in fact, what I try to include is labor. So if I include those 5 plus labor, I now have 60% of my total costs are fixed. What's the greatest influence for reducing fixed cost? Stocking rate. What happens to you in a drought when you have to destock half your herd? Right there. All of a sudden, your fixed costs, which are most influenced by your stocking rate, all of a sudden explode. Because in all our extension meetings, Dr. Steele, all the meetings I did in 2011, 2012, talking about drought, and all the times I heard people say, you got to destock, we never finish the song. Because the next verse of it is, oh, by the way, go ahead and fire somebody, sell the pickup, sell the trailer, all those things. Because what you have to do is get fixed costs down too. You can't just destock a ranch. Now what I'm saying, guys, I'm not saying that's what we're going to do, that's what you should do. I'm just telling you what happened, okay? That's what happened in that red case. All of a sudden they didn't do all those things, but they went from 500 cows to 250, but their fixed cost didn't change. As a big number, did not change, okay? So, $1.70, but you can see both of them have now got to $1.70. Now, I'm going to tell you, you want to know the number in 2016? Any guess? It's not $1.40. I wish it was. It's $1.40 if I only do cash cost. $179.77. Basically $180. That's what those 9 ranches are. And again, those are pretty good ranches. Okay? They're at $1.80. If you don't want to calculate that, then what's it cost you to produce a calf? Okay? Again, that may be productivity. I don't have weaning weights. Well, I don't weigh them, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. Just put it on a calf basis then. What's it cost you to produce a calf? What's it amount to? Well, I told you wrong. It's $1,118. That's that $1,100. The cost to keep a cow is $950. I told you wrong earlier. Okay, so the cost to keep a cow, $951. Cost to produce a calf, $1,111. Okay? You getting $1,100 for your calves? Nope, not anymore. It was fun though, wasn't it, guys? I mean, my son-in-law and I run about 130 cows. My goodness, it was fun selling calves for $1,400. Those days are over. Whew. Okay, for now. All right, and I think for a long time. So $1.70. Now, the third number that I think every ranch should look at. Rate of return on assets. Who is this most attributable to? The owner. He's the one that has money locked up in a ranch. I mean, as you heard, I'm from Vernon. I don't know Stan Kroenke at all. Those of you that don't know who I'm talking about, he's the one that bought the 540,000 acre Wagner Ranch. Why would somebody spend whatever he spent? Let's just say $500 million to buy a ranch, okay? Is it to run cows on? A little bit, but not everything, okay? He's trying to find a place to put money, okay? And that's fine. How many of you got that problem? I ain't got that problem either, okay? I ain't trying to find my places to put money. I'm trying to keep the money that I got, okay? But ultimately, if I own property and I choose to hire somebody to run cows on me to pay my annual cost, okay, that's one of the reasons. And if you can't get me a big enough rate of return, why do I own the assets? Would I be better off putting that $100 million someplace else? And the target that I have is 1.5%. What was your rate of return in 16? We talked about how good a production year was it. How good a financial year was it? Boy, it sucked. I don't care how good production was. Big ranch that I work with in the northern states, been knocking down $2 to $2.2 million in net income for the last 3 years. 2016, it was cut to $700,000. $1.5 million reduction in net income. Why? Well, them daggum prices. His cost didn't go that much up or down, and his productivity is pretty maxed already. I mean, they're doing a heck of a job up there. But all of a sudden, you get a drop in prices. And what did I say about prices? You can't control the average. You can control whether you're above or below the average. It could have been worse for them because they had better prices than average. Think about the guys that didn't have better than average prices, okay? 1.5%. Now let's tell you, there is that range. Went from 20% return down to about 7. Red Ranch was rocking along, kind of making lots of improvements, and then all of a sudden the bottom dropped out, okay? Again, prices hit them. There are 9 ranches that I've worked for in 16. Anybody got any guesses what the ROA was? Minus 9.1%. Rate of return on assets. Minus 9. Now, does that mean they're out of business? No, that doesn't mean they're out of business. It just means things didn't happen. Okay? Probably didn't buy new vehicles. Probably didn't spend quite as much on bulls. Probably didn't do the fence repair that we needed to. We adjusted in some form or fashion. Okay? But understand now, if you're looking at all this, and as I start talking to the ranch, once we have the numbers, probably the most important thing to think about now is, what's revenue going to do for the next 2 years? And how are you going to adjust? Okay? And I don't know the answer to that until, we all sit down individually and you devise a plan, but understand that's what you face, okay, for the next 17, probably 18. Troy was even saying, I think I heard through 2020. That scares me, okay, because I was hoping 18, okay? And what I truly believe is that when people finally get their 16 numbers all done, now some of us may get extensions and blah, 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 but when we finally look at what 2016 was, if we thought we were going to be expanding in 17 and 18, I think we've just figured out we're putting the brakes on, okay? We can't sustain these losses for long. We talk about how long the feedlots lose money and all that. We can't sustain this. How many of you actually made money in 2014? $600 a head of cow. What they don't tell you is we were half stocked, weren't we? We may have got big prices, but it was on half revenue. It was on half productivity, wasn't it? We weren't making the profits, at least in Texas and Oklahoma, that people are reporting, okay? So when I hear cow-calf guys are still making money, and I hear the fact that you made money in 16 kind of bothers me, okay? Because I don't think you did. Now, you guys tell me if I'm wrong. I think we lost some money in 16. I think we lost some big money, okay? And I think we're set up to do it again in 17. Be prepared. That's all I'm telling you. Be prepared, okay? If you think 16 was bad financially, be prepared because 17 is probably going to be the same, okay? Damn, it sucks. Seriously, I'd love to be able to tell you a better story than that, okay? But that's what it looks like right now, okay? So, now, backing up here. So, obviously, the most accountable is the owner on this number. But again, if I'm the owner of this, I want to know, if I've got $2 million sitting there invested in this ranch, and it's only generating me 1.5%, which is the long-term average, I'm probably buying that ranch for other reasons, or I'm controlling those assets for other reasons. And then all of a sudden 16 comes in, and I'm losing 9%. That's a kicker, okay? That's a big kicker. All right, now, those are the top 3. Those are the top 3 that I think every rancher ought to look at, okay? And again, I don't care if you're the same guy in all 3 of those positions. Everybody ought to look at those 3 numbers, okay? So now then, if things aren't right there in any one of the 3, that's where you start trying to figure out, okay, what's really going on here? Am I just not generating enough revenue? If I'm not generating enough revenue, is it a price issue, something that I mostly don't control? Control above or below it, but I don't control average, okay? Is it something that I can control? Is it productivity levels are low, too high, or are my expenses way too high, okay? So the first thing I start with is how much revenue are you getting per cow? Revenue per cow, very simply, is pounds per female times whatever the price was at the time I weaned the calves. And I'm saying about 950. Does that number change? Yeah, it's going to change, okay? I've still got it at 950, but chances are it's going to be closer to 800, 850. Where'd it go? Well, there's the 2 ranches, okay? Again, think about what a cow gives you, okay? She gives me that calf, she gives me productivity, she gives me half the genetics for that calf to gain. She gives me her life, which is built into this revenue, coal income, okay, times whatever price is, okay? So now we're talking, in this case in 2016, the red one being about 700 and the blue one just being about 950. What will those numbers be in 17? Students, I teach at King's Ranch too, so what's that number going to be in 17 and 18? Well, all very simply, 2 things, right? Productivity, price. Productivity going to change? Probably not. Price going to change? Probably for the negative, okay? Be prepared for that. How are you going to prepare for that, okay? I'm bumping through these pretty fast. Now then, let's get to the expense part. Now again, I want to tell you again, cost on those 9 herds was $951 to run a cow. I told you wrong earlier, $951 to run a cow a year, okay? Now then, in that 951, some of that is operating expense, some of it's depreciation, in some cases, some of it may be interest cost, okay? Now, hold that thought for just a minute. Now let's flip to the other side of the profit and loss equation, the revenue. Okay, we just talked about gross revenue per female, but now let's talk about the expenses that are associated with that. What did I spend to get that revenue? Okay, if I get $1 of revenue, in my mind, from a KPI standpoint, there are 4 things you can do with that dollar. Again, I got $1 for revenue. Don't know where it came from, cows, coal cows, stockers, gravel, wildlife, I don't care. Got $1 of revenue. There's 4 things I'm going to do with that dollar. Number 1 is pay operating expense. And operating expense is all my expenses on that ranch except for 2 things, depreciation and interest. Okay? And if you're working on unborrowed money, your own money, you don't have an interest cost, which is fine. Do you have depreciation? Yes. Okay? You can either pay operating expense, escrow the dollar to put some of it against depreciation. You can pay interest, or you can put it in your pocket in the form of net income. Okay? You get $1 of revenue, those are the 4 things you can do. Pay operating expense, pay depreciation, pay interest, or keep it. And I'm saying of that $1 of revenue, 75 cents of that goes to pay operating. Well, that ought to tell you something. Right there, there's only 25 cents left to either pay depreciation, pay interest, or pay me net income. Okay? Is that a lot? Well, again, it kind of sucks sometimes. Okay? This is the cow-calf nature. Okay? So here we go. Can it be negative, or excuse me, can it go higher than what the revenue is? Well, yeah. Anybody ever have more expenses than you did on revenue? Anybody ever get upside down on stocker cattle? Yeah, me. Okay. Yeah, okay. It can go higher than 100% of my revenue. It's supposed to be funny, ain't it? It's not funny, is it? Not funny. Red Ranch, yeah, they were at 140%, just their operating expenses. 140% of the revenue. So obviously they had a net loss. Blue, though, look at those guys. This past year, 43% went to operating expenses. For every $1 of revenue, they only sent out 43 cents, okay? But then they had to pay depreciation, they had to pay interest, and they got to keep some, okay? So, of that 25% that remains, how much do I think you ought to keep? Well, I think you ought to keep it all, but that's not feasible. So I'm putting a target of 5. That ought to really excite you guys. For every $1 in revenue that the ranch operates and brings in, my target is you get to keep 5 cents of it. Woohoo! Pretty exciting stuff, isn't it? You had never heard this before, have you? Kind of sucks, okay? 5 cents. Does it work? Well, it does right up until 2016, and all of a sudden, again, two sides to this equation, revenue or the expense. All of a sudden, revenue goes down, and I haven't adjusted my operating expense, my depreciation, or my interest. All of a sudden, those numbers collapse, okay? And in fact, I hardly get to keep any of it. In fact, what happens, I end up with a net loss in 16, okay? Again, doesn't mean I'm out of business, but it means I'm probably not replacing everything. And the normal story that I get on the bigger ranches that have a hired ranch manager, I'm probably going to, pardon my language, I'm probably going to piss some of you off right here. I just got to make it to that door. I'm 55, but I can still outrun most of you, I think. What I hear out of most ranch managers, well, that depreciation number, that's your number. That's yours and the accountant's number. Depreciation, non-cash cost, right? Yeah, I don't write a check for it, right? But as I tell the ranch managers, if you don't want to include, and even some of the owners, that if you don't want to include depreciation in this, then don't ask me if you can buy pickups, fences, new bulls, any females, because the purchase of capital assets is from whence depreciation comes, right? All I'm doing is taking that bull cost and I'm dividing it across his life. I'm not charging you that whole thing. It's saying cash flow, okay? I'm not charging you that bull cost over 1 year. I'm giving it over his useful life. That's depreciation. So if you don't include it, you can't buy capital assets. Well, that's not right. Include it. Because now you get into a situation like we've got now, and you got to make up that loss somewhere. And more times than not, it's in the purchase of capital assets. I start kicking out depreciation. Well, let's not include that. And it'll cash flow. Okay? Both of those ranches right there cash flow if you take out the depreciation. But is that a good story for the next 3 years? When you know, barring any act of God, that chances are revenue is going to be less for the next 3 years. Okay? It's going to be more difficult to buy those things. Okay? Sucks. And I'm sure now when's he going to get to the happy stuff? That was about as happy as I get, okay? But that's also why I don't work with every ranch in the country. A lot of them don't want to see the numbers, okay? And that's fine. I'm okay with that, okay? All I'm saying is just understand what you're up against, okay? Because I think there's too many people in this industry telling you it's okay. And I'm telling you, it may be okay, but be cautious. Know what your numbers are. Troy sat there and told you time and time again, know what that cost is. And then while he was saying $1.40, I'm saying $1.70, okay? So it's considerably higher than what some people think. So then we really drive down even tighter. And the one that I always pick on is labor. So for every dollar in revenue that this ranch gets, irregardless of where it comes from, I've got a target of 15 cents has to go pay all my labor and management. What's that? Well, obviously it's W-2s. So if I have a hired manager, it's him, plus all his employee taxes, plus all the benefits, house, pickup, all those things, plus any bonus that he may get at the end of the year, okay? Plus contract labor, 1099 labor, okay? Plus if I have a management team or a board of directors that their travel gets paid to meet twice a year on the ranch from New York City. Their job is to serve as a management twice a year on the operation of that ranch. That's management. All those expenses. And I'm going to tell you, I've only got one ranch that can touch 15%. every dollar in revenue that the ranch generates, it's closer to 23 to 25. So every dollar of revenue that you're getting on this ranch, given where revenue is and probably going to be over the next 2 years, it's going to be 25 to 30 cents of that dollar is going to go pay labor and management. Wow. So what are the 3 biggest costs to keep a cow a year? Of that $951, I've told you 2 of them. We've talked about 2 of them. Top 3 costs to keep a cow a year. No, top 3 costs to keep a cow a year. Labor, depreciation, feed cost. Okay? Feed cost. That's number 3. Now, I told you fixed costs make up 63% or 60% of the total cost. Now, we're kind of looking at it from a different cross-section number here, okay? But those 3 costs right there, specifically, labor and management, depreciation, and feed, will take up about 55% of the total cost. So, if I have to reduce my cost, if I'm listening to this guy, Stan, and he's telling me that revenue on the ranch is going to go down for the next 2 years, and I've got to find some way to reduce my expenses, who's got the big targets on their back? Labor, depreciation, feed. You going to fire somebody? Well, you know, I didn't come here thinking I was going to. No, I'm not saying that. I mean, we've got to figure out, you know, where's the balance, okay? Because if you fire somebody, and he's not out there to get that heifer some help when that calf is being born, there's $600 revenue that's gone, right? So again, the balance of these things come into play. Don't want to cut somebody from a labor standpoint. Depreciation, just quit buying stuff, all right? You going to cut your feed cost? No. Well, again, nothing like cutting off your nose to spite your face, right? Because what happens, the chances are I'm feeding something to keep my productivity level up, right? And in fact, the next one is what are you spending as a nutritional base for that female? Because ultimately, Troy's right. Reproduction is the number 1 thing when it comes to profitability, okay? And a close, that may be 1, but 1B is the fixed cost structure of your ranch. Not many people are going to tell you that. 1 is reproduction, 1B is fixed cost, okay? You got to keep both of them going, okay? You got to keep both of them managed. From a nutrition standpoint, and I'm flipping this on you, I'm not talking about revenue here, I'm talking about total expenses. So of all the expenses that you spend for a cow, how much of that goes to pay the nutrition base for that female? And every one of us have different things. Every one of us has different resources. The gentleman that said he was growing hay. Not all of us are growing hay. Some of us have pastures that's already improved that look like silk out there. Some of us have got my ground that you can't ride through it without chaps because of the skeets. Okay? All of us have different resources, but we're all out here trying to do the best job we can based on those resources. Now, what I'm telling you, because you can't have a specific number here, basically what I'm saying is that needs to be somewhere between 30 to 45% of the total expenses. And in fact, that probably fits pretty close. The average across the 9 ranches I looked at was 40.1%. So again, that's kind of a good measure in there, about 40% going to the nutritional base. All right, I'm going to finish up here. I'm going to skip through some. Actually, there was just one more. Things that I didn't show you. Again, what is a KPI? It's anything that's critically going on at your operation that you should manage and you should track over time. Think about those 2 ranches. We've been doing that now in both those. Actually, I only showed you 9 back to 2009. The red ranch I've been working with for 20 years. We have numbers all the way back 20 years. The blue ranch, we've got numbers back 10 years. And I'm not saying I'm looking for that relationship for any of you, because Again, my wife continues to tell me I'm retired. But anybody that wants to look at some of these things, let me know, okay? So, some that I didn't show you, all kinds of little things that we're all doing, trying to make $1 with. That's my information. I noticed my email's not on there, but that's my website, and I'm fixing to give you my email. That's my website, ranchkpi.com. If you'll just use Stan at ranchkpi.com, that is my email. I'd look forward to visiting with you. Again, not everybody wants to do this, okay? And I'm fine with that, okay? But the relationships that I've got with the ranches that I work with, and I think Donald will vouch for you, I pull no punches. I mean, if we're going to do this, hey Shelby, how are you? If we're going to do this, we're going to marry up. And just like any marriage that survives, we're going to yell at each other, we're going to scream at each other, we're probably going to cry a little, but in the end, we're going to make the marriage work, okay? Because ultimately, I'm about trying to make you more successful, okay? That's where I want you to be. God bless each and every one of you. I'll continue to pray. If I can answer any question, I'll be glad to. Andy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Let's give Stan a big round of applause.